Again, ladies and gentlemen, those of you just joining in here, again, make sure you guys are doing a good job getting that first and last name in there for me. Also, notice this, be prepared with colored pencils to color in and or draw flames. If you're able to print out today's note sheet, then there's already flames drawn in for you. Otherwise, you need to go ahead and just have some paper, and if you're, I don't know how you're gonna be doing the notes because it's a live lesson today, but you need to be prepared to do that, okay? So it is a part of today's lesson, I promise. The other things you guys are gonna need to do as we go along is, you're gonna be holding up your drawings, okay? Because I'm gonna need to, that's how I'm gonna basically grade what you guys are doing today, and as you do it and as you go along, okay? Can't find the note sheet. So the note sheet is actually in today's, the module or lesson for today. Let me see if I can get the copy for you here. All right, guys, so I just did post into the chat a copy of the note sheet. So if you need that, I'll give you just a moment, get that downloaded. A couple more folks are showing up. Bear with me, guys. I'm having to eat a little bit early today. So, yeah. So while we get those last few people in, I'm actually starting on my lunch. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get started with this. So again, hopefully you have the copy of the note sheet for today. I posted it. I can post it in the chat again if need be. It was available for you to download. So if you're able to print it, again, you'll see on the second page, there's an outline of some flames. You're going to have some time to draw on those or color in those throughout the lesson. If not, if you are maybe filling in the notes electronically because it's a Word document, what you'll need is some kind of paper and some colored pencils because you are going to need to be actually drawing or coloring in some flames. So I know it may sound crazy and it may be even silly to some of you, but it is a part of today's lesson, all right? So we're gonna go ahead and get started. So what we're doing today is we're looking at what's called English policies or British policies, and excuse me, and we're connecting them into the bigger picture as well. Tomorrow, there's going to be some different things for you guys to do and look at and view. Excuse me. And one of the big things is to remember that all these things that we're looking at this week, so the effects of the French and Indian War, the Enlightenment, the Great Awakening, all of that, and it's all leading into the sort of this fire that's kind of burning, okay? It's kind of a small campfire, if you will. And then what's going to happen today is we're going to look at these British and English policies, and it's like pouring gasoline onto this fire, okay? And if you've never seen that or don't know what I'm talking about, gasoline onto a fire just goes, whew. And so that's really what we're doing today. So today is the gasoline that gets poured onto the fire, okay? So first part of this, all right? Now this picture you see here is actually of the Boston Massacre, okay? And we're gonna talk a little bit more about the Boston Massacre today. We're also gonna dive into it some more next week as well. Next week too is going to be, we get into more details on some of these policies and actions. Today is really more of a broad overview of things to kind of get a big picture of what happens. And then next week we deal more into the nitty gritty and the details, okay? All right. So first thing to remember is that England faced two problems after the French and Indian War. Problem number first is that England was in debt, like tons of debt after the war. Okay. And so the basic reaction here is, well, we got to raise some money. We can't just live in debt. Okay. So we got to pay this money back. And they looked at it and said, well, we fought this war on behalf of the colonists, so they should pay for it. Makes sense. And this really upset the colonists. And you've probably heard me say this or seen it on some of the videos I've done for you guys. When you start messing with people's money, they get upset. Okay, so if you think about it in your own context, let's say that you had a job and you earned $100, and then after taxes, you took home $80 every week. Okay, well, let's say you were doing that every week, and and then all of a sudden, one week, the next week, instead of getting $80, you only got $60. Same amount of work, but your taxes all of a sudden have gone up. Well, most of you are not going to be really excited about this, okay? Now, some people are like okay with their taxes going up or paying more money if it's for something they believe is worth it. But most people don't really go around volunteering to give more money, in particular to the government. Now, they may donate and other things, but it's generally speaking, they want it to be their choice. That's what most people tend to want, okay? And so when the colonists have this happen to them, they get angry, they get frustrated, they get outraged, really and truly, at a lot of different things. But in particular in this is the first bit of the outrage and being upset. Then, next. The other thing called Pontiac's War. Now, Pontiac's War, we've touched on this when we talk about there's conflict at post-French and Indian War in the Ohio River Valley where the colonists were trying to get to. We put this name on it, Pontiac's War or Pontiac's Rebellion is another way you'll hear it phrased. And this is where the Proclamation of 1763 comes along, okay? And they say, nope, no colonists, you're not going past that Appalachian Mountains, and if you're already there, tough luck, you got to move back because we're not dealing with this anymore. We're broke, we're tired, and no. All right, and so again, this made the colonists mad because they just spent 9 years fighting for this, and now they can't even move into the land. Okay, so that's the backdrop of the two main issues facing the English after the French and Indian War. Now, we got what's called the Navigation Act. Now, the Navigation Acts had actually been in place for a really long time. They actually predate the French and Indian War. However, after the war, they actually started enforcing them. Okay, so these are laws that have been on the books for a long time, just no one really enforced them. Now, we know that they were sort of enforced because they deal very directly with mercantilism, which we talked about and dealt with when we talked about the Triangle of Trade. Mercantilism, you'll remember, is when the raw materials leave the colonies and then come back as manufactured goods. And it's a very direct pipeline between the two. Navigation Act specifically required that all manufactured goods to the colonies had to be carried on British ships. Also, all foreign goods had to pass through British ports, which meant they were taxed, and this was before heading to the colonies. So either way, the colonists get the short end of the stick on this. Okay. Now, you may be wondering, yeah, but what's the big deal? They've been on the books for a while. Mercantilism was a thing. It was just kind of happening. Well, it was and it wasn't. Okay, so it was happening some, and this wasn't good for the colonists either. This wasn't a good thing, but like I said before, it wasn't really being enforced. And then all of a sudden, Parliament realizes, wait, if we actually enforce this, we might get some tax revenue. So this frustrates the colonists. They had been used to for 150 or so years. Again, 150 years before all this is when Jamestown was founded. And so you had this really long period of time where the colonists, for the most part, had been able to do what they wanted to do, like on their own. If they wanted to trade with Portugal or someplace in Italy or something, they could. And now all of a sudden, Parliament's saying, no, can't do that anymore. So this would have been very frustrating for a lot of the colonists, particularly those in the Northeast, who were far more dependent on that trade than other parts of the colonies. Okay. Then that gets us to the Sugar Act. Now, when I first heard about the Sugar Act, I was like, and this was a big deal. I'm like, why? Like, I'm thinking like those, bags of sugar in the store, like in Publix. So that cost goes up a little bit. What I didn't really realize was how important sugar was to much of the economy in the colonies. So this was placing a tax on molasses, which was actually so important that it becomes a part of, like, when we learn about the Triangle of Trade, molasses is going into the Caribbean or what. I mean, it's a big deal. And almost equally important is it did not allow the colonists to import foreign rum. Now, whether that was for cost or quality or whatever it is, foreign rum was a pretty significant. It wasn't a it wasn't like a basic need, but it was something that was quite popular. So colonists are getting frustrated by this. Again, the costs are going up and all these things. They can't get the stuff they wanted. But what made matters even worse on this was how it was actually enforced. Because what you had was any of the warships, all right? So any basically British naval ships could stop a ship and say, oh, you're smuggling, and we're going to search your ship. And this was without any kind of what's called writs of assistance. And writs of assistance is kind of like a warrant, and that it was about whether or not you could search a ship. Typically, warrants are going to be a little more specific than writs of assistance. They're going to be much more broadly worded. Okay, so now you could have any naval ship go up to any other ship and just accuse them of smuggling. And so, if you're smuggling, they could take your ship, they could punish you, put you in jail, all these things. And so this opened up for a lot of bribery. It became very unfair, frustrated, upset a lot of the colonists. Okay, and look, bottom line is not a good move on the way of the British. Now, colonial money was actually removed of its legal value, starting with the Currency Act of 1764. This was much more of a power grab and sort of trying to assert control by Parliament and the King. So it was much more about that than maybe even about raising money. But again, Currency Act 1764, colonial money, no more legal value. So if New York was making its own £5 notes, too bad, not worth anything anymore. Now, what do you do if you have a New York £5 note? Well, tough luck for you. All right, so what I want you guys to do here for just a moment is you're going to work on those flames, okay? Here in just a moment, and what I'm going to have you guys do is you're actually going to turn your cameras on and you're going to hold the picture up of what you've done here. So I'm going to give you about a minute or two to do that, okay, to work on the flame. You can join our good friend here who's pouring gasoline on an open fire, because what could possibly go wrong with that? But I want you, if you got the printout, I only want you to do about a third of the flames, or if you've drawn an outline of some flames. Again, you're not doing a whole fire yet, just a little portion of it, okay? So I'm going to give you guys about a minute or so on that, and then I'm going to have you guys start showing off what you've done, okay? Just a minute, about a minute. All right, guys, about another 15, 20 seconds, and I'm going to have you guys turn on your cameras, and let's hold up those pictures of those flames you've got started, okay? So another 15, 20 seconds. Johnny Ray, South Pacific, Walter Rich, Joe DiMaggio. Richard Nixon, Studebaker Television, North Korea, South Korea, Marilyn Monroe. All right, guys, let's go ahead and see those flames you guys have been working on. So get your cameras on and hold them up for me, please. All right, very good. I see some out. Yep. All right. Yep. See some reds. You guys can make your flames any color. It doesn't have to necessarily be reds and yeah, yellow. Oh, very good. All right. I'm digging this. You guys are doing awesome. Well done. All right. So just keep in mind too, guys. Again, flames don't necessarily have to be red or yellow. If you want to be, that's great. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but or like sets up on stuff fire in like science class, where like it burns different colors. Like I want to say salt burns blue, maybe. I don't know. Or set copper on fire. It's like a really cool stuff. So greenish color. Very good, guys. All right, well done. So you guys go and put those down. We're going to go ahead and move on to some more notes. I'm going to have you guys work on those flames here a little bit more as we go through the lesson. All right, so just kind of keep that in mind, okay? All right, so let's move on here. Let's take this. Yeah. All right. So next thing that happens we need to deal with is what's called the Quartering Act of 1765. All right. And so what this is, big thing here is it required colonists to provide British troops with provisions and a home while stationed in the colony. So both food and a place to stay. So both things, okay? And I don't know about you, but I would really be frustrated if all of a sudden sheriff's office came along and was like, oh, by the way, we're going to have a whole bunch of sheriff's deputies living in your house. And you got to feed them and all that stuff, which I have no problems with the sheriff's office, but I don't know that I want them all living in my house either. And the colonists would have had the very same or similar kind of reaction, okay? They don't want troops just living in their home, just like you wouldn't, okay? Especially if they're just telling you to do so. Now, it's a great move for the British, though, because, again, that means they're not having to pay for the food and the housing for the troops that they've sent over. So it's a win for them, but it's a negative. Colonists are really frustrated by it, okay? Now, next thing is the Stamp Act. All right, now Stamp Act is one of those ones that, again, I didn't really understand it when I first heard about it because I'm thinking, stamp? You mean like on a letter or something? Like, what's the big deal about that? Well, it's just a little bit more, actually a lot more than that. It actually is dealing with a tax on almost all printed material, and not just like a stamp for a book. You're talking like a stamp per page in the book. So these stamps, which cost money to get very expensive very quickly for a lot of people. And they get very frustrated by this, right? And so this forms the Sons of Liberty by a good friend, Mr. Sam Adams, or also as you'll see him called Samuel Adams. Yeah, that's the same guy who gets a beer named after him. I mean, founding father, get a beer named after you. What a reward. But in Boston in particular, you have the formation of the Sons of Liberty, and they were formed to protest the Stamp Act. The other thing that happens is what's called the Stamp Act Congress. They actually send this petition to the king, explaining to the king, like how wrong this is, and this is where we get the phrase "no taxation without representation." So that comes out of the Stamp Act Congress, which, by the way, a Congress is just a term used for like a gathering of people or representatives. So you'll see like Stamp Act Congress, First Congressional Congress. That's what that word means, where it comes from. Also, many colonists who were protesting began to tar and feather tax collectors. I know I'm signing up to be one. No, I'm not. That's a terrible idea. Because if you think about tar, if you don't know what tar is, it's a really sticky substance. If you've ever been by, like when they're doing road work and there's that really nasty smell, and you see those vehicles, those things that have a lot of black gunk on them. Yeah, that's asphalt, which has tar in it. If you could imagine that being poured on your body, how painful that would be. Yeah, and trying to get it off, ooh, there's ripping some skin. Plus they put the feathers on, and it's a great, joyous time for everyone. Said no one ever. And so this is what's going on. This is how the colonists are protesting, okay? Things are going great. I mean, we're only 2 years past the end of the French and Indian War, and man, things are going great. And then it gets even better with the Declaratory Act. Now, this really was just Parliament extending that sort of heavy-handed, we are in control kind of thing going on here. And so they had the complete authority to make the laws. Now, to understand why this is such a big deal, you got to remember, colonists for like 150 years have been kind of doing their own thing. So now all of a sudden Parliament comes along and said, nope, Virginia, no, nope. Our laws, what we decide. Not what you decide, not what you decide, but what we decide. Okay, and this is going to frustrate a ton of colonists. Maybe you picked up on the pattern here. All right, now with the Townshend Acts in 67, well, I got to back up a minute here, I guess, and explain that sometimes these protests sort of work and Parliament kind of rolls back some of the taxes, but then they'll turn around and institute more taxes. So it's like this never-ending cycle. And so when we get to 67, taxing of basic items like paper and lead and glass and tea, oh my, everything basically the colonists have to import is being taxed. So this leads to what's called the circular letter. And the circular letter was sent by the Massachusetts legislature to other colonies on discussing how do we unite against these British taxes. So again, let's remember where we've gone. 54, Albany Planning Union, nobody shows up. Now you have another attempt to try and unify the colonies. The end result of this is that there was a boycott of English goods, but more troops either were sent in to protect the tax collectors. So you have more troops coming in because of the Proclamation Law of 1763. Now you have more troops coming in to protect the tax collectors. This is going splendidly. All right. Now, this gets us to then the Boston Massacre in 1770. Now, the thing about the Boston Massacre is the details of exactly what happened are not nearly as important as how the story was communicated and spread throughout the colonies. Now, you have two different versions of the story. Version one says that there's some agreement between the two versions, but where they both agree, I guess, is that there was a money in a storehouse, as it should be. You had troops guarding it, and you had colonists protesting. Okay, those three things are, at their basic level, in agreement between the two stories. Story one, though, says that it was these troops, they panicked, and they opened fire on these simple, peaceful protesters and shot, and they killed 3 of them. On the other hand, the other side of it says that you had these soldiers who were simply doing their job, and it was this terribly vicious and mean and cruel and very threatening mob who comes up on them, and they shot in self-defense. Okay, now as it turns out, the court actually found that they were innocent because it was in self-defense, and I actually tend to believe that. This seems actually a much more plausible story to me than, just sort of itchy-fingered soldiers. Okay, because these were professionals, and from what you know for other things that these groups of protesters did in Boston, it's really not hard to imagine that they would have been that violent. Okay, but again, what's important was the story that was told. And the story was told in large part because of what's called Revere's engraving, which basically is this right here that you see. And it was used as propaganda. It was used to tell the side of the story that said, oh, it was these evil British troops that shot these innocent colonists, that kind of thing going on. And that's the story that spread throughout the colonies. Now, again, there's some truth in that, but a lot of it's very misleading as to what actually happened. But again, the facts didn't matter in this case. Okay. Now, the British, for their part, have an amazing response, which we'll get to in just a moment. But I want you guys to go and work on those flames some more for me here as you enjoy this. Well, this gentleman and his amazingness. Okay, so you guys got a minute or so to work on those flames some more, see if you can maybe make them bigger, more colorful, whatever it is, and then we're going to have you guys turn on your videos again, and we're going to check and see where you guys are at. But also, again, enjoying this video of the best among us as he sets his backyard on fire. Trouble in the Suez. All right, guys, let's take a look. Turn on your cameras there. Let's see how you guys are doing on those flame pictures for me. See if you guys have updated those some. So I need everybody making sure they're doing that. So let's take a look. Thank you, Mr. Elijah and Zuri. Very good. All right, nice job, guys. You guys are doing well with this. So I need everyone to make sure to show them off. Show off those amazing pictures. Some definite flames. I'm liking this. You guys are doing a really good job with these. You're thinking, yeah, why am I doing pictures? Yes, I know. All right, awesome. Very good, guys. Good job. All right. I promise there really is a purpose to this. It's not like I'm just making things up as I go. So, all right. Well, let's take a look. Let's continue on here. I know I could watch this particular video of this guy like all day. I mean, he's setting his entire backyard on fire, and he runs, he trips over the cow or his lawn furniture, nearly steps in the fire with his right foot. I mean, I know what's a better idea than an open flame and pouring some gas on it? Yeah. Okay. All right. So we get to what's called the Committees of Correspondence in 1772. Okay. And the Committees of Correspondence come along and they're like, this isn't good, like we have certain rights and you're not listening. And this sets the stage for an organized attempts in other colonies. And you'll notice this is again led by Mr. Samuel Adams. I called him Samuel this time. Give him a little more formal name. Okay. Kind of makes it sound a little bit better. Okay. And so this is, they state the rights of the colonists, they list up their grievances, and it's, again, this is the first committee of correspondence, but others will pop up. These actually become pretty important once the actual American Revolution begins, because they form a communications network, and something that really the British government doesn't fully appreciate how efficient it actually is. Okay. So again, this is Committee of Correspondence, and again, they're petitioning the government. They're doing things that, the Enlightenment thinkers said was a thing you could do. Weird. It's like all of these things come together. So strange. Okay. All right. So moving on to number next here. So we get to the Tea Act. All right. So the Tea Act is in 1773. Now, the Tea Act in and of itself really wasn't as bad as the colonists thought that it was. Okay. So again, just like with the Boston Massacre, it's not the facts that are important in the time, but it was the story or the perception. Very much the same thing with the Tea Act in 73. So the Tea Act comes along because the East India Company's got all this excess tea hanging out in a warehouse in London, okay? And they need to get rid of it. So they're buddy-buddy. So they're buddy-buddy with a lot of folks in Parliament. And they go to Parliament and say, hey, listen, here's the deal. Why don't we do this? You give us exclusive, we're the only group that can sell tea to the colonists, and you can put a tax on it, so you get tax revenue, we get rid of our excess tea, it's a win-win situation, and everyone's happy, right? Parliament's like, yeah, it's a great idea, everyone's happy, except for the colonists, but whatever. Okay, and this is what begins to happen. Now, interesting little fact there for you. The tea in the colonies was still less expensive than tea in England. So even though the tea was being stored in London, had to be shipped across, so there's a cost there, and it was being taxed, it was still less expensive. That just basically means that the people in England were getting taxed out their ears on this, okay? Not a good situation for them, but whatever, they didn't know any better. All right, so then this leads us to the Boston Tea Party. So the Boston Tea Party is in 1773. You get the Sons of Liberty, led by, yes, Samuel Adams. They dressed up as Mohawk Indians, they boarded 3 ships, and they dumped 342 chests of tea into the Boston Harbor, okay? Now, I always, when I hear the story or read about the story or think about it, I think about what was it like as one of the fish? There was a ton of fish in Boston Harbor, right? And they're just doing their thing. They're just hanging out. Maybe some of them are like Dory and they're lost all the time. And they're just chilling out. And then all of a sudden, poof, there's these big chests, and inside this chest is this tea, this thing. They didn't know to call it tea because they're fish, but like, what was that like for them? I mean, am I the only one that thinks about this stuff? I mean, maybe y'all don't. I don't know. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. I don't know. I do. These are the things I think about. So I wonder, what was it like for the fish at the Boston Tea Party? Or like in the days to come after the tea actually starts to get into the harbor itself, right? I mean, who knows? Anyhow, so the Boston Tea Party the response to the Tea Party is the British government's last chance to avert war at this point, in my opinion, because how they respond is either going to diffuse the situation or it's going to make it worse. It's going to be one or the other. There's no middle ground on this, okay? And let's just say they didn't exactly diffuse the situation, okay? What they actually did was the complete opposite of diffusing it. They passed a series of harsh laws. They have two different names depending on what side of the ocean you're on. So they're either the coercive acts or the intolerable acts. Okay, now the intolerable acts is what the colonists would have called them. And so what does that mean? Well, they closed Boston Harbor until the tea was paid for. So to really understand how big of a deal this is, you have to think of it in terms of, well, if I'm importing stuff, it all comes through the harbor. If I'm exporting stuff, it all goes through the harbor. Like everything functions in and around the harbor itself. That's why the Boston is where it is, okay? And so by closing it down, you're impacting a whole bunch of people. See, because remember, you see it on there, the point of the laws were not to deal with the people who actually dumped the tea into the harbor. It was to punish the entire people of Massachusetts. So everybody was getting punished for the actions of a few. Well, it's not exactly fair, but they're trying to send a message. They're trying to be very heavy-handed with it, and so they closed the port. They also then, to prevent, in a way to try and prevent these things happening again, and people gathering in large groups to meet and talk, they banned town meetings. Okay, so again, this is restrictions of. All right, it was a restriction of being able to express yourself and talk with others and all of that. The other thing that happened was they expanded the quartering of troops. So two things with this. One, they expanded it because they sent more troops in. They ended up sending more troops. And two, these troops essentially are there to, well, prevent more conversation. So it's one thing to ban town meetings. It's another thing to try to find a way to prevent, friends from coming over and talking, just kind of hanging out at your house. Well, if you've got a bunch of soldiers hanging out in your house, you're far less likely, at least, to invite somebody over so you can discuss how you're going to maybe dump more tea in the harbor or whatever it is. Okay, so these soldiers acted as kind of like spies, if you will, as well. So they're there again. They're trying to prevent and control the people, prevent things from happening again, and control the people. Yes, because again, thinking about what could possibly go wrong with this. Oh wait. Well, wait, there's more. Okay, so this leads to what's called the First Continental Congress in 1774. This was 56 delegates from every colony meet together in Philadelphia. Compare that to what it just 20 years before, when Franklin proposes the Albany Plan of Union, and like nobody shows up, and the few that did were like, no, to 56 delegates from every colony, as far south as Georgia, all the way up through Massachusetts, the whole gamut, coming together to figure out how they are to respond as a group to these acts. Okay, and so that's a massive, massive change. It's a huge swing in public opinion and perception. Okay, now this is where the revolution begins. Now, I know the first shots won't be fired for a little bit longer, and you still have, Declaration of Independence in the next couple of years, those kinds of things. But the reality is, from a very practical standpoint, the First Continental Congress is now the colonies they're really united at this point. Now, are they really wanting to break away at this point? Well, some do. Some people do. But others are like, no, we just need to fix the problem. Like, we need to fix what's going on here. Okay, and so That's the issue. This is where the revolution begins. The fires are burning. They've poured so much gas on the fire at this point. There is no way for the British government to go back and stop it now. Okay. All right, guys. So that wraps up your notes on this for today. So you guys did an excellent job with this. There's nothing you really, I mean, you guys did good. My suggestion to you is, if you have any other time today, make sure you're getting those missing assignments done. I know some of you do have some of them. Many of you have gotten much better about it, so kudos to you about getting those assignments taken care of, taking care of them on time as we do them each and every day. This is good. This is going to help you. On Monday, you're going to have a little mini quiz on the stuff that we've dealt with this week. Tomorrow, you guys are going to have, I'm going to have some different things, number of different smaller activities for you guys, just to kind of show you and bring some things together. Should be pretty simple, straightforward today, not as long, and you're not going to have like the long live lesson, those kinds of things. Now, you will have a Zoom. You will have a Zoom meeting tomorrow. We will have one, but it's not going to be this long, okay? So unless you guys have any other questions for me or anything else, we are good to go. And you guys need to go ahead and get your stuff done, okay? Yeah, sugar into the sweet tea. Yeah, yeah, I just now saw that. Sorry. Yes.